Why don't we get started? I'm Edward Felix, my co-moderator, Conrad Balasar. The last session, the umbilical session, which is for those tiny little inconsequential hernias, ran over. So we'll get started with the more important inguinal hernias. And I'm going to give a very, very short presentation just to start, sort of like a sermon from the mound here, as I'll call it. Let's see how I can get, you want to go to the next? How do I get this cursor in the right place? No, it's got to go on that screen.
Oh, here? To next?
All right, next, okay. Okay, I have two disclosures, nothing for this talk. This is harder than doing surgery. Next. And I'd like to dedicate this to my mentor, which was Professor Lloyd Niehues. All of us have had mentors, and I think it's important to recognize those people. If it weren't for Professor Niehues, I wouldn't be here today. I'm slightly older, though, today. Next slide. The purpose of this session is to attempt to compare and contrast several approaches to MIS, inguinal hernia repair, in an attempt to describe the best approach. Lecturers will cover routine as well as complex scenarios. They put forward their personal opinions based on both data and their own extensive experience. The indications and contraindications for their approaches will be stressed. It will be up to you, the audience, to decide if there truly is a best approach. Next slide. Before we start this debate, and we don't have any boxing gloves today, but I don't think we'll need them. We're all friends. I would like to propose the following. Next. Tomorrow, hopes we have learned something from yesterday. Famous philosopher, Marion Robert Morrison, best known as John Wayne, and that's very true. Next slide. Learning history may be very boring, but should prevent us from repeating the mistakes of the past. Next. It tells us the principles that must be applied to achieve success in the future. Next. It doesn't matter which surgical approach you choose to repair an inguinal hernia, and I think was true of those umbilicals we just heard about. Whether you use an anterior, posterior, open, or whether you use mesh or without mesh. Next. But today we're going to confine today's talk, since we only have an hour and a half, to just the MIS approaches, which are TAP, TEP, ETEP, and now RTEP. If you understand the evolution of inguinal approaches and why we have succeeded or failed, you will understand the principles that lead to a successful repair for both you and your patients. Next. It is the study of this history that led us to develop the steps we feel are required to achieve what we call the critical view of the myopectineal orifice, which I think you'll see in almost everybody's presentations today. Why should we learn and apply this critical view? Why should the presenters present it? If you achieve this critical view, next, you should, and we don't have the data yet, you should decrease surgical complications and should reduce the incidence of recurrence. It's just like wearing a parachute. We don't have the data of what happens if you don't wear it, but I don't think we need much more data to prove our critical view is important. Next. The critical view is not just the view that you see at the end of the case. I believe it's an existentialist concept. And what do I mean by that? Next. It is not just the final view, but the process of achieving that view. And I think you'll see that in all the presenters' talks today. Next. It is the steps required to achieve it. The view and its steps are the same no matter which approach hopefully these presenters are going to show today, whether it's a TAP, TEP, ETEP, or RTEP. Next. This is the view I think you're going to see over and over again. I won't bore you with it now. Let's get the debate started. Next. Thank you very much, and we'll get our debate started with our first presenter.